The explosion didn't sound like an explosion. It sounded like a dull, metallic cough, something a machine might do before it dies. At 9:07 p.m. Houston time, more than 200,000 miles away from Earth, astronaut Jack Swigert looked down at a panel of blinking lights inside the Apollo 13 spacecraft and said a sentence that would echo through American history. "Okay, Houston, we've had a problem here." At that exact moment, the United States was not watching the moon, it was watching itself fall apart. The year was 1970. America was tired. Vietnam was bleeding into living rooms. Trust in government was collapsing. The moon no longer felt magical, it felt expensive. Apollo 13 was supposed to be routine, almost boring. No one expected disaster. No one expected heroism. No one expected that a failed mission would become the most human space story ever told. But space does not care about expectations, and it never forgives arrogance. 3 men were sealed inside a metal coffin thinner than a soda can, drifting through absolute darkness with limited air, limited power, and no guarantee that Earth would ever see them again. This is the true story of how they survived, not because technology worked, but because people refused to give up. Jack Swigert was not even supposed to be there. Just days before launch, original astronaut Ken Mattingly was removed from the mission due to possible exposure to measles. Swigert, a backup, was rushed in at the last minute. He trained hard, but deep down he knew something dangerous about spaceflight. Every mission carries ghosts of mistakes made long before the countdown begins. Commander Jim Lovell had already been to space 3 times. He was calm, Midwestern, deeply religious, and respected by everyone. Fred Hayes, the lunar module pilot, was a quiet engineer, a man who trusted systems more than speeches. Together, they launched from Kennedy Space Center on April 11, 1970, riding a Saturn V rocket that shook Florida to its bones. America barely noticed. 3 days later, Apollo 13 was coasting peacefully toward the moon. The crew joked with mission control. They filmed a TV broadcast that few people watched. They floated, laughed, and believed, just like thousands of engineers believed, that everything was fine. But the problem was already there. Buried deep inside the service module were oxygen tanks designed years earlier. One of them had been damaged during a routine ground test. It had been overheated. Its wiring insulation had been weakened. No alarm had gone off. No report had screamed danger. It passed inspection. In space, small lies become lethal. When Swigert flipped the switch to stir the oxygen tanks, a routine procedure meant to prevent stratification, the damaged wiring sparked. The tank exploded. The blast tore through the spacecraft like a silent shotgun. Oxygen vented violently into space. Power systems failed. Alarms screamed. Gauges spun. The ship began to die. Jim Lovell looked out the window and saw something terrifying, a cloud of gas streaming away from the spacecraft, glowing in sunlight. That was their air. That was their power. That was their ride home. On Earth, Mission Control froze. Then Gene Kranz stood up. Kranz, the flight director, wore a white vest and believed in discipline the way soldiers believe in weapons. He gathered his team and said words that would become legend. "Failure is not an option." It wasn't a motivational quote, it was a statement of reality. If they failed, 3 Americans would suffocate in space, live on television. Apollo 13 was no longer a moon mission, it was a rescue. The lunar module, meant to carry 2 men to the moon, became a lifeboat for 3 men. It had limited oxygen, limited water, limited power, and was never designed for this role. The power systems failed. Astronauts powered down the command module, leaving it cold and dark, like a hibernating animal.
Inside the lunar module, temperatures dropped, water condensed on walls, carbon dioxide levels rose dangerously. And that's when the next problem appeared. The carbon dioxide scrubbers were incompatible. The command module used square filters, the lunar module used round ones. NASA engineers dumped boxes of spare parts onto tables and were told, make this work, using only what's on board. No computer simulations, no internet, just brains, duct tape, plastic bags, hoses, and desperation. They built a solution on the ground and radioed instructions to space. Up there, 3 freezing men followed those instructions carefully, knowing that a mistake meant slow suffocation. Fred Hayes began to feel sick. A kidney infection developed, likely caused by dehydration and cold. He hid his pain. Complaining wouldn't help. Jim Lovell prayed quietly. Jack Swigert kept working. As Apollo 13 looped around the far side of the moon, completely out of radio contact, the spacecraft was pulled by lunar gravity into a path that could either sling them home or send them drifting forever into deep space. When contact returned, Earth exhaled. Now came the hardest part: re-entry. The command module had been powered down for days. No one knew if it would wake up. No one knew if the heat shield had been damaged by the explosion. If it failed, the capsule would burn up like a meteor. Millions of Americans stopped what they were doing. Churches filled, televisions glowed. On April 17, 1970, Apollo 13 hit Earth's atmosphere at 25,000 miles per hour. Blackout. 30 seconds. 40. A minute. Then, a parachute blossomed in the Pacific sky. Then another. Then another. 3 men came home. They were thinner, older, changed. Apollo 13 never landed on the moon. But it landed somewhere far more important, in the American soul. It proved something rare in history, that intelligence, teamwork, humility, and human stubbornness could defeat even the cold indifference of space. No single hero saved Apollo 13. It was saved by thousands: engineers, technicians, mathematicians, leaders, and 3 men who refused to panic when death floated inches away. Today, the moon missions are history books. The spacecraft are museum pieces. The white vests are faded. But the lesson remains. Technology will fail. Plans will collapse. The universe will not care. What matters is how humans respond when everything breaks. Apollo 13 was a failure, and that failure became one of the greatest successes humanity has ever known. Because sometimes the most important destination is not where you plan to go, it's making it home alive. Apollo 13 reminds us that progress is never clean. It is built on mistakes we survive, not perfection we imagine. In an age obsessed with success, this mission whispers a harder truth. Resilience matters more than triumph. The moon did not need Apollo 13, but humanity did. And maybe, in a world still full of unknowns, that lesson is more necessary now than ever.